There is something you brought with you into this morning, not the day's agenda, not a list of what needs to happen before noon. Something quieter than that, and heavier. A loss you have been carrying for longer than you want to admit. Something that was taken, or something that slipped away before you could hold it tightly enough. Or something you laid down so carefully over so many slow months that you barely noticed the moment it left your hands entirely. You know exactly what I am talking about. You knew it the moment you saw the title of this prayer. God sees it too. He saw it before you woke up this morning. He has been watching over the exact thing you thought no one understood. The exact grief you have been too tired to explain. The exact place in your heart that still flinches when someone asks how you are doing and you say fine, because the real answer is too long and too tender for casual conversation. Come just as you are, not when you are better, not when you have processed it enough to feel spiritual about it. Right now, exactly here, He is close to the brokenhearted. The Lord is near to those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:1-8. This is a morning prayer for the ones who are carrying a loss into a new day. And God is already here. There are losses that announce themselves loudly. The kind that come with a phone call, a diagnosis, a conversation that ends everything. A morning you wake up and the world is permanently different from the day before. You know when those happened. You remember the exact moment the ground shifted. But there are other losses that move more quietly. They do not arrive in a single shattering moment. They drain out slowly. Like water from a cracked vessel, you did not notice was broken until one day you reached for it and it was empty. The dream you stopped mentioning because every time you said it out loud, it felt a little more distant. And eventually it was less painful to go quiet than to keep hoping. The relationship that was supposed to last and did not. The version of yourself you had planned to become by now, the one you promised yourself you would be, and somehow the years moved differently than you imagined. And the gap between who you are and who you thought you would be is a kind of grief not many people have words for. Maybe it is the loss of years you cannot get back. Time that felt like it was stolen from you by illness, or by someone else's choices, or by circumstances so far outside your control that you are still trying to understand how this became your story. Maybe it is the loss of hope itself, not any one specific thing, but the quiet erosion of the expectation that good things were still possible for you. That particular loss is one of the most devastating and one of the least acknowledged, because you cannot point to the day it happened. You can only notice that one morning you woke up and hope had become something you watched other people carry. I want you to know something, and I want you to hear it slowly. Your loss is not invisible. Not one moment of it. Not the loud, shattering kind. And not the slow, quiet, draining kind. God has been present in every single chapter of it, and He has not looked away. There is a story Jesus tells in the 15th chapter of Luke that I do not think we return to often enough. It sits between two more famous parables, the lost sheep and the prodigal son, and because it is shorter, it is sometimes treated as a bridge passage, a filler. But there is something in this story that speaks directly to you this morning. A woman has 10 silver coins. She loses one. And what does she do? She does not sit down and accept the loss. She does not decide that 9 out of 10 is close enough. She does not console herself with the thought that the coin is gone and there is nothing to be done. She lights a lamp. She sweeps the entire house. She searches carefully, methodically, with single-minded intention, until she finds it. And when she finds it, the celebration is disproportionate to the loss. She calls her friends and neighbors together. "Rejoice with me," she says, "for I have found the coin that I had lost." Luke 15:9. This is who God is toward what you have lost. He is not sitting in heaven philosophically accepting the losses in your life as inevitable. He is not saying 9 out of 10 is statistically fine. He lit the lamp before you did. He has been sweeping the house of your story since before you knew what was missing. He is the God who searches actively, deliberately, with a love that is not discouraged by the dark corners of the very hardest seasons. The coin did not find its way back to the woman. She found it. God is not waiting for your loss to somehow reverse itself by the force of time or circumstance. He is in motion. He is searching. He is moving through the hidden parts of your story with a light in his hand and a purpose that will not be satisfied until what was lost is found. The silence you have been living in is not evidence that he stopped looking. It is simply that you have not yet seen the lamp from where you are standing. He sees what was taken from you. He sees what quietly drained away. He sees the year you cannot get back, the relationship that collapsed, the hope you stopped carrying in public, the version of yourself you mourned without a funeral. None of it has been out of his sight for a single moment. There is a young man in the book of Genesis who knew something about loss. Joseph was stripped of his coat, thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned for years for something he did not do. If you were to track his life from the outside, there would be long chapters where everything that could go wrong did go wrong, chapters where every promise seemed to be moving in the wrong direction, where every door that should have opened closed, where the gap between what God said would be and what Joseph's circumstances showed him grew so vast that endurance itself must have felt like its own particular kind of grief. And yet, and this is the extraordinary part, the text tells us again and again in those dark chapters a single, quiet, almost understated phrase. But the Lord was with Joseph, not with the Joseph of the palace, not with the Joseph of the coat of many colors, with the Joseph in the pit, with the Joseph in the prison cell. In the chapters that looked from the outside like evidence of abandonment, God was more specifically, more intimately present than the narrative of success could ever have demonstrated. What felt like loss was not the end of Joseph's story. And what no human eye could see in those years of silence was that the losses were not accidents of a disordered universe. They were the specific geography through which God was routing Joseph towards something that could not have been reached any other way. You intended to harm me, Joseph says to his brothers, years later, from the other side of it, but God intended it for good. Genesis 50:20. That is not a verse for a theology lecture. That is a verse for the 3 a.m. version of you who could not sleep because the loss felt too permanent. That is a verse for the season where the silence grew so long you had to keep actively choosing to believe against the weight of what you saw. God has not been absent from your loss. He has been in it. He has been working in the hidden architecture of your story in ways that cannot be seen from inside the pit. The loss you are grieving is not outside his sovereignty. It is inside his hands. And his hands, as we will see, are the hands of a potter. Before we go any further, I need to tell you who made this promise of restoration possible. Because if we talk about what God restores without talking about what it cost him to be a God who restores, we have missed the most important thing. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Word made flesh, entered into loss more completely than anyone who has ever lived. He lost the wholeness of heaven for a manger. He lost the company of the Father's presence. For the first and only time in all of eternity, in those hours on the cross when he cried, my God, Why have you forsaken me? Every form of abandonment you have ever felt, relational loss, spiritual silence, the feeling of being left, he entered it. He did not observe it from a distance. He walked all the way down into it, to the very bottom of it, so that no depth of loss you will ever experience is a place where Christ has not already been. And then he rose. The one who lost everything, who was stripped, abandoned, killed, became the first and definitive proof that in God's economy, loss is not the final word. Death itself became the doorway to a life that could never be taken again. He who did not spare his own son but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? Romans 8:3-2. If God gave his son, his most precious, his most irreplaceable, he will not withhold your restoration. The cross is the anchor for every promise of recovery. If he was willing to go that far, if he was willing to give that much, then nothing you have lost is beyond the reach of his capacity to restore. Jesus Christ is the proof that God is not a God who abandons his own. He is the proof that what looks like the end of a story may be the precise point where God is about to do something that could not have been done any other way. Your loss is not outside of what Christ has already carried, and your restoration is not outside of what he has already made possible. He has carried it, and he is carrying you. Now let us bring all of this before him. Let us pray. Father, I come to you this morning carrying something that has been heavy for a long time. I am not coming with a composed spirit and a neatly organized request. I am coming the way the woman in Jesus' story came to her lost coin, not with resignation, but with a lamp still in my hand, unwilling to accept that what is lost is gone for good. I come with my loss, all of it. The loss I can name and the losses I still do not have words for. The loss that happened in a single moment and the losses that happened so slowly I barely noticed until I reached for what was supposed to be there and it was not. The dream that quietly stopped being something I believed in. The relationship that ended and left a silence where something living used to be. The years, Lord, there are years I mourn, years that felt like they were taken from me. Years I spent in the wrong place, or in the wrong season, or simply waiting for something that did not come the way I expected. And the sum of those years is a grief that I have not always known how to bring to you because it felt too large and too diffuse to name. I am naming it now, all of it. To you, I am the vessel you have been working. And I confess that there have been seasons in the kiln, seasons of heat and pressure, and the slow, incomprehensible reshaping, where I could not see your hands and I could not understand the fire, where what was happening to me felt less like being formed and more like being broken, where I whispered in the dark of those seasons, Lord, are you still here? Are you still at the wheel? Because from where I am, this does not look like formation. It looks like destruction. I confess that fear has spoken louder than faith in some of those seasons. I confess that I let the silence of the waiting grow into a theology, a small, dark theology that said the silence meant distance, that the delay meant denial, that what was lost in my life reflected something about your opinion of me, something about my worth in your sight. I believed lies about you, Father, and I am sorry. Restore what the lies have taken. Give me back the understanding of your character that fear distorted. You are not a God who loses track of what belongs to you. You are not a God who watches loss with indifference. You are the God who lights the lamp. You are the God who sweeps the house. You are the God who searches the dark corners of the hardest seasons with a light in your hand and will not stop until what is lost is found. Restore my joy. Not a performance of it, not the shape of joy worn over grief like a mask, but the real thing. The deep, anchored joy that does not depend on circumstances having resolved themselves. The joy that Habakkuk found, not after the fig tree blossomed, but inside the season when it did not. Lord, I want that joy, the kind that does not require good news to exist, the kind that is rooted in who you are rather than in what I have received from you. Restore my hope. You know the specific places where I have stopped hoping. You know the prayers I used to pray loudly that I now pray quietly, if at all, because repeating them started to feel like pressing on a wound. You know the promises I once carried openly that I now carry hidden, because it hurts less to keep them private than to be seen hoping for something that has not come. Lord, breathe on those places again. Those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy. He who goes out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, bringing his sheaves with him. Psalm 126:5. I choose to believe that today, restore what was taken in the seasons when I could not see you, the provision that did not come when I needed it, and I had to make do with less than I had trusted you for. Restore it. The relationship that broke in a way I did not choose and could not prevent. Restore what can be restored and heal in me. What the breaking damaged. The years, I am bringing the years, Lord, the ones that felt like loss. I am not asking you to return them to me. I know time does not move backward. I am asking you to redeem them, to bring forward from them something that could not have come from any other years, from any easier path, from a story that cost less. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me. Jesus declared, quoting Isaiah, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. Isaiah 6:1-3. I receive that this morning. I receive the exchange. I lay down the ashes. I lay down the mourning. I lay down the spirit of despair that has been pulling at me in the quiet moments when no one is watching. I lay all of it at your feet, and I ask you, the God who makes all things new, the God whose restoration is not the cheap kind, not a consolation prize, not a lesser version of what was taken. I ask you to restore abundantly. I want to tell you something about what God's restoration looks like, because it is not what fear tells you it will be, and it is not even what you might expect when hope begins to return. When the potter takes a damaged vessel, not to discard it, but to restore it. What comes out of the kiln is not what went in. It is not diminished. It is not patched. It is not the original clay with a crack filled in and the evidence of damage concealed. What comes out is something that has been through fire and is stronger for it. Something that holds its form with an authority it could not have had before the breaking. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery not by hiding the cracks, but by filling them with gold so that the places of breakage become the most beautiful and the most visible parts of the restored vessel. God does not restore by erasing your story. He restores by making the broken places the places where His glory is most visible. What you have lost has not disqualified you from a life of meaning. It has not made you less than what you were before. In the hands of the God who restores, the very thing that fear said would diminish you becomes the testimony. The very chapter you would have edited out becomes the chapter someone else needs to hear. The very loss you have been carrying quietly, heavily, alone becomes, in God's hands, the specific weight that trained your endurance, deepened your compassion, and made you capable of a strength and a tenderness you could not have developed any other way. And the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he had prayed for his friends. And the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Job nedvenkat. The restoration that came to Job was not a replacement of what was lost. It was something new, bearing the weight of everything he had carried through the darkness, given by a God who had been present in every moment of it. The man who emerged was not the same Job who entered the fire. He was a Job who had seen God, who had been in the presence of the Almighty in the darkness, and who carried from that encounter something no prosperity could have given him. Your restoration is coming, and it will bear the marks of God's hands on it, not despite what you have been through, but because of it. But I want to speak now to the part of you that has been trying to make the restoration happen. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from the loss itself, but from the effort to manage the loss, to strategize around it, to position yourself for recovery, to hold the pieces in place by sheer force of will until God shows up and does what you have been waiting for him to do. It is the exhaustion of someone who is doing the work of trusting while not yet fully resting in trust. And it is real, and God sees it, and there is a gentler way. He restores my soul. Psalm 2:3-3. Not just your circumstances, not just your situation, your soul, the inner architecture of you, the part that generates your capacity to believe, your ability to hope, your willingness to keep walking forward when the ground is unsteady. That is what God is saying he will restore. Not just the external losses, though those too, but the interior you that has been worn thin by the carrying. You do not have to figure out the mechanism of your restoration. You do not have to understand the timeline. You do not have to hold the strategy for how God is going to move this particular set of circumstances from where they are to where they need to be. That is not your work. Your work is surrender, not the defeated kind, not the resigned kind, but the surrender of a child who has handed something too heavy to a father with strong enough hands, and is now simply watching to see what he does with it. He restores. Let him. Release the timeline you have been holding so tightly. Release the need to understand exactly how he is going to do this. Release the specific form you decided the restoration had to take, because God's version of restoration may be larger, or shaped differently, or arrive through a door you had not been watching. And you do not want to miss it because you were facing the wrong direction, waiting for the version you expected. Joseph did not plan his way from the pit to the palace. He simply remained faithful in the chapter he was in. The woman with the lost coin did not know where the coin had fallen. She simply lit the lamp and swept. Hannah did not engineer the answer to her prayer. She poured out her soul before the Lord and left it there. Surrender is not passivity. It is the active, intentional choice to put what is too large for your hands into the hands that are large enough. It is the choice to stop carrying what was never yours to carry alone. It is the most courageous thing a person can do in a season of loss, to say, I trust you with this. Even with this, he will restore your soul. And from there, everything else follows. Now I want you to hear this, not as a comfort for a hard day, but as a declaration of what is true about you. You are not defined by what you have lost. The loss is real. I am not asking you to minimize it, or to pretend it did not happen, or to perform a recovery you have not yet had. The loss happened. It cost you something, and God knows exactly what it cost. But you are not the sum of your losses. You are not the year that was taken, the relationship that ended, the dream that went quiet, the hope that eroded. You are not what fear has whispered about your future in the dark hours of the night. You are not the worst chapter of your story. You are a child of the God who restores. You are held by the hands of the potter who has not finished with you. You are watched over by the God who lights the lamp and searches until what is lost is found. You are walking in the story of a God who took the worst loss in all of history, the death of his son, and turned it into the greatest restoration the universe has ever witnessed. That is your God. That is the God you are praying to this morning. And that means this is not the end of your story. The chapter you are in, however long it has lasted, however heavy it has been, is not the final chapter. The potter is still at the wheel. The woman has not yet stopped sweeping. The father of the prodigal is still watching the road. Your restoration is not a question of whether, it is a question of when. And in the mystery of God's timing, which is always more merciful than our own, the appointed moment is already being prepared. Receive this today. What has been lost in your life is not lost from God's sight. He has been searching. He is searching still. And he will not stop until what is his and you are his is fully restored. As we close this morning, I want to invite you to do one thing. In the comments below, I want you to type the words, "Restore me." Lord, not as a transaction, not as a formula to unlock something, but as an act of worship, as the declaration of a heart that has chosen this morning, against all that fear has said, to trust the God who restores. And if there is someone in your life who is carrying a loss right now, someone who is in a hard, quiet season, someone whose grief you have seen and not known how to meet, share this prayer with them. It may be the lamp they need in a dark corner of this week. Gifting this forward is itself an act of prayer, a way of saying God sees you to someone who needs to hear it. We are not a channel. We are a community of people who are bringing our losses, our griefs, our quietly surrendered hopes, and our trembling, reaching faith to a God who has never stopped searching for what is his. Drop your prayer request below. We will carry it together. And God, who has heard every prayer you have ever prayed in a room by yourself, he hears this one too. He is restoring you. Even now, even here, even today. God bless you.